Hello and welcome back to the official channels of Rahul's IAS. I am Kriti and in today's video we'll be discussing a landmark judgment delivered by the Honorable Supreme Court on 8th of November 2024 in the case concerning the minority status of the Aligarh Muslim University, or as we may call it, the AMU minority case. So, the title of the judgment that I'm going to discuss in this video reads as the Aligarh Muslim University versus Naresh Agarwal and others. And in this ruling, the Apex Court has clarified important legal principles for determining whether an educational institute qualifies as a minority institution under Article 30 of the Constitution of India. This case has revisited a crucial issue that has been debated: the constitutional rights of the religious and linguistic minorities to establish and administer educational institution under Article 30 of the Constitution. Historically, the court had addressed this issue in 1967 in the case of Aziz Basha versus Union of India, where a 5-judge bench had ruled that AMU was not a minority institution as it was not established by a central legislation, and thus it could not be established by a minority community, thereby denying AMU the privileges given to the minority educational institution. Fast forward to the year 2024 and the present case where a 7-judge bench led by the former Chief Justice of India, Honorable Mr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, had reconsidered this 1967 judgment. The majority of the bench, comprising Justices D.Y. Chandrachud, Justice Sanjeev Khanna, Justice J.B. Pardiwala and Justice Manoj Mishra, overruled the Aziz Basha judgment. In contrast, Justice Suryakant, Justice Dipankar Datta and Justice Satish Chandra Sharma each wrote separate dissenting opinions outlining their different perspectives on the matter. So, the primary issue in this case centers around the interpretation of the phrase establish and administer used under Article 30, Subclause 1 of the Constitution. Now, before going any further, let us briefly discuss and understand what Article 30 talks about. So basically, Article 30 provides for the rights of the minorities to establish and administer educational institution based on their religion or language, while also adhering to the reasonable government regulations. Thus, this provision serves a dual purpose. That is, first, towards preventing discrimination against minorities in establishing educational institutions, and second, in providing special protection towards their administration. Now, let's dive directly into discussing the various important aspects of this judgment. So, the first and the most important aspect which this court had looked into was that what is the test laid down under Article 30, Subclause 1 for being a minority institution. While discussing this element, the majority took a rather flexible approach in interpreting the term establish and administer, and noted the various elements for determining the term establish, which would include the persons behind the institute, that is, the promoters and the founders behind such institution, or the general circumstances surrounding such incorporation. The court also held that the minority character under the article does not contemplate institutions which are exclusively for the benefit of the minority community, and neither is the existence of religious symbol or place in the premises of the educational institution necessary indicators of such minority character. More importantly, in this case, the majority had laid down a list of parameters for helping the court in determining the minority educational institution, among which the first test is the ideation of the establishment. That is, the courts must identify the brain behind the establishment of the educational institution, for which the letters, correspondence with other members of the community could be a valid proof. The second indicia which the court had determined was the purpose for which such educational institution had been established, and held that though the institution need not be established only for the benefit of the religious or linguistic minority, but it must be predominantly for their benefit. The third test was tracing the steps taken towards the implementation of the idea, for which the elements such as raising of the funds, acquisition of land, etc. may be considered. And the last test is the administrative structure of the educational institute, regarding which the court observed that the right to administer flows as a consequence of the institution having been established by the minority. And thus, it is not required that the institution must be administered by the minority, but what is essential is that the administrative structure reflects the minority character of such institution. Moving on to the dissenting opinion on this issue, Justice Suryakant, while laying down a partially dissenting opinion, had held that to seek the protection under Article 30 of the Constitution, the minority institution must satisfy the conjunctive test, namely that it was established by the minority community and also is being administered by such a community. He laid down a list of few illustrative factors that may be gauged to see whether a minority community has been established by such a community or not, such as who is responsible for the genesis of the idea and the accumulation of funds, or for framing of the charter documents of the educational institution, or for procuring of the government approval. Justice Kant specifically noted that the administration at its core has to vest with the minority community only, which would include the long-term administrative roles and also the day-to-day sundry decisions, concluding thereby that the minority community should have both de jure and de facto control. Further, Justice Satish Chandra gave a rather restrictive interpretation and laid down a threefold test which provided that for the purpose of establishment under Article 30, the minority community must play a predominant role, almost to the point of exclusion of others. That is, intangibly bringing about the entirety of the institution into existence. Also, he pointed that the purpose of the institution must be to predominantly serve the interests of the minority community. Lastly, he said that the real decision-making authority of the institution should be of the minority community, and the actual, functional, executive, and policy administration should rest with them only. Next, Justice Dipankar Datta clarified that for the purpose of Article 30, the right to establish and administer must go hand in hand, and noted that once established, administration of the institution also begins simultaneously. The next aspect that needed examination was the question that whether the decision in Aziz Basha was correct or not, regarding which the majority had categorically overruled the case of Aziz Basha to the extent to which it held that an educational institution is not established by a minority if it derives its legal character through a statute. Further, Justice Kant also agreed with the majority opinion, but suggested for modification to the extent that it held that by virtue of Section 6 of the AMU Act, AMU could not be brought into existence by a private individual or a private body. As opposed to these opinions, Justice Datta and Justice Ahuja had categorically upheld the judgment in Aziz Basha on the ground that it had been a judicial verdict for more than half a century on the status of AMU vis-a-vis the minority rights, based on strong foundational basis with strong legal reasoning. Moving on to the next important aspect, which was that whether AMU qualifies as a minority institution under Article 30 of the Constitution or not. On this issue, the majority, along with Justice Kant, refrained from going into the factual merits of the AMU controversy and referred it to be placed before a regular bench to be decided based on the principles laid down in this judgment. However, Justice Dipankar Datta was the sole judge on the bench to have expressly declared that AMU does not qualify as a minority institution, as it was neither established nor administered by any religious community, and thus the protection under Article 30 subclause 1 is not available to it. The last facet of observation revolved around the issue that whether an educational institution, upon being declared as an institution of national importance, would forego its minority character and status or not. The majority ruling held that the declaration of an institution as one of national importance does not amount to change in the minority character of the institution, and that such an interpretation would render the fundamental right guaranteed under Article 30, subclause 1, subservient to the legislative power of the Parliament, while also observing that the terms national and minority are not mutually exclusive to each other. The dissenting opinion in this judgment, however, held that any altering of AMU status would fundamentally conflict with secular principles embodied in the Constitution, and moreover, it was noted that it is important for the universities of national importance to be under the jurisdiction of central government to ensure their operations align with their designated national importance. So, these were the broad observations which the court had given in this judgment while laying down clear guidelines for determining if an educational institution is a minority institution as provided under Article 30, subclause 1 of the Constitution. This is all from my side. I hope that you liked the brief summary of the case. Thank you for watching. See you next time.